Hello, welcome and welcome back to Leaders in Conversation with me, Anni Townend. Today's guest is David Dand, Managing Director of Coreus, the Brighton-based talent acquisition agency. And the title of our conversation is The 5-Step Framework to Understanding Recruitment and Leading Career Change. Leaders in Conversation is the podcast in which leaders share their lives and leadership stories, the people, places and experiences that have shaped their values, their beliefs, passion and purpose to encourage and inspire you to be even more confident, curious and courageous in your leadership. If you're not already, please review and share it. Thank you. I had the pleasure of being introduced to David through a mutual friend, previous podcast guest, Dougal Fleming. If you haven't already listened to that episode, I highly recommend it. Dougal encouraged David and I to have a conversation and said that David has a wonderful story to share. So, David, as you know, I'm really intrigued to hear your story today. I know in our conversation you're going to be offering valuable insights into your 5-step framework that you use when leading a candidate search to understand fit and motivation. You'll also be sharing your insights into what you, the listener, need to know about changing career and recruitment and thinking about your next big step. And finally, hiring tips, which I'm sure we all need, those of us who are leaders, to ensure that we have the right people in the right roles. Welcome, David.
Thank you so much, Annie, and I'm really looking forward to talking to you.
Well, likewise, I'm very excited to hear about you and to hear your story, which was signposted to us both when we were introduced by Dougal. So I'd like to begin by asking you, who are you by way of your values and beliefs, your passion and purpose? And most importantly, who are the people, the places and the key experiences, the turning points, if you like, that have made you the leader you are today?
So you'd like me to answer all of that in one? My goodness.
Well, there are two questions that I always ask leaders in their own personal leadership that I think we all need to be able to answer, which is, who are you and why are you here? So the who are you is your values and beliefs, and the why are you here is your passion and purpose. And I'm inviting you, as I do leaders with whom I work, to share something of your values and beliefs, your passion and purpose. And a real appreciation I have that place, as well as people and experiences, can absolutely shape us and make us who we are and inform why we do what we do. So I'm very curious in both who you are, who are your people, places and experiences that have made you you.
I grew up in London. My career has been in recruitment and HR and working with people, but I had a standout experience where I was leading a large team and my priorities had gone more into growth and sales and marketing than processing at this point. And I just remember this person being recruited. There was an empty seat in the office, which can happen, and someone was recruited and they'd gone to Cambridge, the same university as our CEO, and they'd worked at a kind of top consultancy. They'd gone any good. And it was rushed through, this recruitment, because the seat had been vacant and there was pressure that I'm sure that was being felt across the company or the team. And the individual was, of course, great. We all are. And there can be various factors, influencing factors there. But despite being great, they were not great for the job. And it had a real kind of impact on me and influence. And it was a catalyst for me starting my own business in the people space, where I really understood how good people practices can generate profit and happiness. And likewise, bad people practices, what impact that can have. So we went from an office where we were almost starlings, the murmuration, everyone was moving and playing. It was wonderful. We didn't have to communicate. We knew what we were doing. We were innovating. There was joy. And we were in Coreus, which is where the name of my business comes from. Versus what happened when this individual started, where communication completely changed, the ambience, the vibe, profits dived, positivity dived, and ultimately the kind of service that we were offering customers, that customer experience changed. So I wanted to start my business to work in that space with small professional services organisations that were struggling with that. So either turning away work because they couldn't find the staff, or wanting to improve their people practices. So that's led me to do what I do now as a headline. I think my values are really important to me. So when starting my business, I did a qualification in career counselling, not because I wanted to be a career counsellor, but because I wanted to have more conversations with employers and individuals around careers. And out of that work, I was able to deep dive into a number of elements about me, and out of that was looking at my values, and a really simple exercise to do, but ultimately ending up with 3 values that are really important to me, which are openness, positivity, and individuality. Openness for me is around creativity, being open-minded, and it's also around transparent communication. So being as open as possible to avoid issues that come further down the line. But those values were really fundamental to me and how I work and what I care about, and in tune how we work as a business, what makes us.
I love that you do have 3 values, because as you mentioned, we spoke about you having the framework of 5, that you think in 5s, 3s or 1s. I have 3 values, and the first one is kindness. The second one is generosity, and the third one is courage. And again, that informs how I live my life, how I lead, how I am with people in my life and leadership. And it's who I am when I'm at my best. I loved how you described the experience that you had where everybody had been rather like a murmuration. I had a really vivid picture of a murmuration, and we both live in the southeast of England, and there are sometimes beautiful murmurations to be seen not far from Coreus, Brighton, on the sea, over the piers. And the image that I had was of people all moving in the same direction, helping each other and supporting each other.
Where that came from as a marketeer, it was a friend of mine, when I was starting my business, he said, well, what do you get when talent acquisition works? And that was the image that I had, the starling murmuration, which is a kind of a wonder of nature. They're not sure why they do it, how they do it, how they don't bump into each other. And that is what you get when it works, when you're in a team with people with you. It's a kind of hidden communication, or you just know intuitively, instinctively, you're in a flow state. So that is where that kind of comes from. And I think maybe that second value of positivity and also individuality and uniqueness and style, it comes from that. I think that's just very important to me in terms of positivity is looking to progress, looking to move things on. Enthusiasm, drive underpins who we are, how we work, and where we're at our best.
And it is a choice, isn't it, positivity? Because that's something that most of the time we can choose positivity over negativity. We can choose to bring a positive mindset to something, to look at something through a positive lens and have that sense of possibility about the future versus arriving with a negativity, which I'm sure all of us from time to time slip into when things become too much, or when we're not enjoying and finding our joy in the murmuration that is where we can do our best work and bring our best selves to contribute. And I think it's so important to know what helps us to thrive, which is something that you talk about and is in your 5-step framework, knowing the conditions in which you can be positive and find your joy and help others to find theirs along the way.
It's a potentially dangerous one. We know that it's important to talk about things, and life isn't all a smooth trajectory to success. Things happen, and a plastic smile and fake positivity and a lack of authenticity is not a good thing.
What helps you to bring a positive mindset to what you do, recognizing that there are times when all of us can feel down through not being well, can get us down, circumstances, challenges in our lives, be that at work or at home, or not having work can be a big challenge, along with being in the wrong job or feeling stuck in a job. So what have you found in your experience has helped you to bring positivity when you haven't perhaps been feeling great?
I'm happy when I'm proud of myself. And I think we will all understand and empathise with those situations you just talked about, applying for jobs and not hearing back, not getting real feedback, going through periods of difficult change and transition and being in a job where you're not happy. And you can't just be positive. We can get in a negative mindset, but it's about trying to live your life in a way that's true to your values and what's important. So it could be about sharing. I want to be open with you. This is my opinion of the way you just approach that.
And it's that encouraging openness, isn't it? And creating, for you especially, given that openness is the first of your 3 values, one of those that you live and lead by, and creating an environment, a business in which people can be open with each other and find their positivity, and recognising that we're not always, all of us, going to feel positive at the same time. I sometimes use, not so much at this time of the year in the UK, it's not happening now, but it was happening a few weeks ago, where you see geese flying in V formation. So another bird metaphor for how they fly and how cyclists cycle and support and help each other, with not always the same bird or the same person at the front leading, but still being part of the same team, the same group, going in the same direction, but recognizing, and that's what takes me to your 3rd value, that of individuality. Recognizing individuality as well. And it would be great to hear you say a little bit more about your 3rd value.
It links with place, which I'll talk about in a moment, which is South Bank, London. And individuality for me comes out of skateboarding and art. And really South Bank, which is where I remember skateboarding when I was young. And skateboarding, if you've ever watched it, no one ever lands anything. It's not like you go down and see people excelling at skateboarding. Most of the time people are falling over and the board doesn't do what you're supposed to do. And so it's not necessarily about what you're doing, the technicality of how difficult it is, the concept of how you do it. Individuality for me is about inclusion, belonging. It's about style and art and colour and uniqueness. And I enjoy that we all have a unique life and accept and love the fact that we all have unique strengths. And I try to look at that when I'm working with people. So whether it's a stressed out director who isn't in control of maybe the business or spinning all the plates perfectly, or it's an individual who's going through a career change. And I love that individuality that we can all bring to the table.
So helping people to find their individuality whilst having a sense of belonging. And it's back to that, finding that group, finding your tribe in which you can be different, be yourself, and are at the same time part of something bigger than who you are by the sound of it.
I think so. And a danger there to do with coming back into the corporate setting is hiring people that are just like you. And there's something so safe about that. But for me, individuality is a love of the weird and loving that people can come to the table with a different viewpoint. And my goodness, that's exciting. And that can reduce risk and it can bring innovation. And so individuality is enjoying all our differences. And that feels like an ingredient in a hyper successful team.
One of the things that I've found and I am really passionate about is inclusion and diversity of thought and feeling. And in my work, helping leaders, senior leaders and their teams create a safe environment in which people feel safe and are able to be open and honest with each other, to have that transparent, open communication. Lucy Kidd and myself have co-created what we call our collaboration equation, which starts with psychological safety, then inclusive dialogue, diversity of thought and feeling, which leads then to collaborative edge. And I think leadership is having the confidence and the encouragement of others, having people around you who cheer you on and believe in you and help you get back on the board again and have another go and experiment, try something else out. It's something I have never done, skateboarding, but I have watched and love watching. And it is very beautiful. And I'm amazed that people do get on and off and have another go very quickly. And so there's something about learning, experimenting, having fun at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's an art and it's a love of falling, embracing that falling is part of life. So for me, Southbank skateboarding it was a real kind of understanding of maybe an approach to life and what are you bringing to the table, and everyone brings different influences and that feeds into that individuality and individualism. And sometimes it's a challenge when I've worked with people that value collectivism and, society. So there's a contrariness.
It's that contrariness that I think when people are thriving together and helping each other to thrive together and are committed to each other's success, that can lead to greater innovation, greater creativity, and people have a lot more fun together.
What you mentioned earlier about not always agreeing with each other, I challenge people at work. I let them know I'm going to challenge you on this and I want to be open with you. That's what I took from the way you approached that, or that's how it made me feel. And that's incredibly empowering. And it comes from a positive place, a constructive place.
Well, it comes from, I always say to people, when we're committed to somebody's success, when we then acknowledge them, support is sometimes in the form of a challenge that I often encourage people to have a look at, is that of Radical Candor by Kim Scott, in which she talks about being personally caring and challenging directly, and the importance of that openness and transparency in communication. And I think challenging people to be their best because you are committed to their success is so important. David, you've spoken about the places and the experiences that shaped you in forming Coreus. What about the people in your life? I know that there are very special people in your life, and this is an audio podcast. However, behind you and for listeners, beautiful poster that has been painted by one of your children that says, "I love you, Daddy." So I know you are a dad. Tell me a bit more about the people in your life that are an important part of that work life that I know comes into the 5-step framework as well.
I think two people that really influenced me are, of course, my parents. My dad was an artist or a graphic designer who had his own business, so an entrepreneur, but really a creative. And my mum's an accountant. Neither of them went to university, so through hard graft, achieved their success. But my dad suffered some career challenges to do with property, invested in a property in London, a commercial space. But during the recession, and that was a really difficult time for him and for us as a family. And then my mum's career at that point really took off, when she was an accountant. She worked for the leisure space. And just when she was really going to make it, she was released or made redundant. And those influences had a big effect on me and how I trusted companies and the concept of safety at work. I would say that those two people had a real influence on me and my career and my life. But the person, if you asked me to name one, would be my wife. Having a career, having a business, it's a team effort, at least for us. And my wife has been there a number of times where I've thought, oh, this is a really difficult day. And people you can go to and be vulnerable is an incredible and an important ingredient for success and overcoming problems. And then just really in terms of her own areas where she excels, which are different to me. I'm not unkind, but certainly she is incredibly kind and patient and tolerant, and those are virtues and strengths which are really good influences on me. And she's the mother of our children.
Really lovely, and so important to have close to home a go-to person, and equally being a go-to person for other people. And something, again, that I speak with leaders about is the importance of knowing who your go-to people are. And someone introduced me to the importance of having your personal boardroom where you have people sitting around that table. For you, your wife would be there, and I imagine your children too. But the other people in your life, in your work, friends, colleagues, I imagine Dougal might be there as well at your table. The people that you go to for different things, of course, you will be at their table. Not necessarily the same people, but some of the same people. You will be their go-to person as well. And the importance of having that person who will support you, challenge you, love you, be kind.
And it takes hard work, Annie. It's not like it's so much luck to do with meeting my wife, and that night. But it takes hard work to maintain that relationship and our openness and the fun. We have so much fun, but my goodness, we've raised 3 kids who are all 2 years apart through the pandemic. I have my own businesses. It's not all been roses, and that takes hard work. But again, I just love that individuality and her unique strengths. And what we both bring to the table is we have a really colourful, fun, joyous life. But it is hard work, and we maintain that relationship really carefully.
Which is wonderful to hear. And also, it is one of the things in your 5-step framework that you mention as being really important, the life-work balance, thinking about what's important to you. It would be great to hear as we come to the close of the conversation, but before you get to your top tips, a little bit more about the 5-step framework to successful recruiting and hiring and making a career change.
You could fill a page with really important factors that are all essential in understanding you, yourself, where you've thrived and how we've ended up to where we are. And these can include looking at your own timeline and your values. What will motivate you? What will satisfy you? And these are quite unique things to look at, which can help you approach your career and your needs and your wants with a different lens. What your interests are. And interests link so much in with resilience. That interest feeds resilience and going the extra mile. But I've had some jobs, and specifically one job I can think of, which should have been an outright success. And it turned out not to be. And it took a lot of work to think about what actually will happen there. How can that not happen again? How could I be a tool to support a company to avoid hiring the wrong person? Because that wasn't a successful outcome for me, for the business, the group of people that I worked with. What could I do? And this 5-step framework comes quite simply out of a study done on what people want to know when they look at a job advert. What are the most important things that people want to see? And actually, I boiled that down to really understand what does the company propose, what's their value proposition? And then, in turn, what do people really want?
Can you summarise the 5 steps in the framework, David?
Yeah, absolutely. The first one is money. And I think we're all aware that there's more to life than money. After the pandemic, I think everyone has had a deep dive, no matter who you are. I think the COVID certainly shook that up. But ultimately, we need to pay the bills. And it's an unfortunate one for many who look at life more deeply than money. But salary and benefits is ultimately a really important thing to understand what, is necessary to pay the bills or driving that change. It could be a child that needs some extra support. The second one, which I think is often overlooked, is to do with, we call it convenience, but it's quite simply your work-life balance, or Jeff Bezos calls it work-life harmony. But the concept of how you can marry work around your caring commitments. Someone could have a perfect job, great salary, great business, but they're unable to pick up their kids from school. And that just will not work, for example. So it could be, in this current day and age, this is particularly complex in the world of recruitment, this individual thing around convenience. It could be commute, hybrid working. What are your expectations? What are your needs? It could be the location of the clients, where you're traveling to. So practically, how does this work in your life and feed your sense of autonomy, working on your own terms? The third one is around the culture of the business, and that is really important in terms of the fifth one, which I'll talk about, which is where you're going in your career. What does the future look like? And so if you're hiring for a role, this could be perfect, but if there's no route to progression, no route to partner, and that's ideally what that individual is going to be working for, then it's a mismatch. And I feel like if any one of these ingredients is out of place, it can have a real impact on long-term fit. But it can also feed into what is unique about that business as an accountancy firm compared with another accountancy firm, which on the face of it were all the same. But actually, are they private equity backed? Where are they in that journey? It creates a very unique culture. And that proposition, a business is speaking to the market, or what somebody wants, is very important. And culture and career progression are two things that feed resilience. The other really important one is the day-to-day job. Its balance. What does that look like? Is really important for well-being and fit. And I'll give you an example. It could be the day-to-day job of a salesperson for what's the length of that sales cycle. If someone is short-term deals, 3 to 6 months, that's very different than working on, for example, much larger 10 times the size scale of the deal. It could be 50 million, but the scale and length of that deal cycle. What does that day-to-day job look like? Planning, execution, risk of projects is essential. And we use this framework to reduce everyone's risk. And by using this framework, our acceptance of offers is well over 90%. And the acceptance of people who accept those offers and then start, again, is well over 90%. So by understanding these things, we're able to reduce our risk and avoid wasting everyone's time. Because if you're ever hiring for a job and you hire someone and they've got a long notice period and then ultimately they're counter-offered, you start again. And that problem is deeply felt sometimes within smaller businesses, especially in senior leadership.
Thank you, David. They're a great set of steps and helpful whether anybody listening is thinking about their own career and the hiring journey, but also thinking about it from the perspective of hiring the right person for the right job. And as you said, for both parties, it is a time-consuming process and it's really important to get it right. As we come to the close of our conversation, having talked us through the 5-step framework, what are your 3 key top tips, encouragements to somebody looking to make a big career change and or someone looking to hire somebody where perhaps in the past they themselves may have had a negative experience, or they've made a negative hire which has not only upset them but been upsetting for the person they hired and indeed the team that they were part of? Your 3 top tips.
So the first one would be understand that 5-step framework to reveal where there could be a mismatch. And then you can have a conversation and overcome any potential obstacles and or save yourself a lot of time starting a job and then 1 year later leaving it. And that's an expensive challenge. I think the other 2, so the first one is embracing individuality. And then the second one is accepting there are high stakes at play. So I'll start with that. The high stakes is if that job doesn't work out, that can be, it's expensive moving jobs for anyone that's been left looking for a job, and it could be just a couple of months, but that's a scary time. And there's a visible hard cost to do with recruitment, but these soft, invisible costs. And I think it's about understanding and remembering that the stakes are high. And what I mean by those invisible costs is then looking for work if you don't have work for a couple of months. How deflating and frustrating and demoralizing that can be. So really understanding how important it is to nail it down right. But likewise, if you're hiring and it doesn't work out, the stress of an under-resourced team, how that can feed further turnover and replacement amongst the team. So not just your working week being impacted, but you know that something's not right. I think a real acceptance and an acknowledgement that the stakes are high and good people practices and care over people generates profit, success for all. So we've got embracing the 5-step framework, remembering the stakes are high, and then it's about individuality and embracing individuality. So often individuals, when they're looking for a job, it can be that they've been rejected by their current company. Something's not right. They're part of the old culture. They're not a part of the new culture, and suddenly you're not getting invited to meetings or you're not having the same impact in meetings. So people lack confidence when they're changing jobs often, and you can lose sight of what you're bringing to the table. Likewise, if you're hiring, I think is a real important understanding of where this person thrives. Great exercise to do with someone is to ask them, where in your life, in your work or your personal life, have you been at your very best, where you've thrived? And you get them to think, and really, there are all sorts of different things that come out. Doing my qualifications while I had children, part-time. The way I organised my life, that was me at my best. My back against the wall. It could be solving problems when I was young. And understanding the ingredients there. What do you bring? Your unique skills and strengths that you're bringing to that situation, but also the conditions that enabled you to thrive. And we had place earlier about Southbank. There was travelling and adventure, friendship, opportunism, being creative. These are things that are still as relevant now for my success and where I could really outperform as they were when I was 15. Not into what we don't want, but what we really want, where we're at our best, what are our unique skills. And it allows you as a job seeker, put your best foot forward to a company and they say, who are you? This is it. You can abbreviate it and summarise it just very quickly.
I really love that. One of the things that I sometimes ask, and in response to having read somebody's LinkedIn profile where they had said the 5 most important things to know about me when working with me. And it was so helpful ahead of the call that I was to have with them. And it got me thinking, what would be the 5 most helpful things for somebody to know about me who is working with me or hoping to work with me? And that's what you're saying is know yourself, know who you are at your best. Have a look back through your life when you were your happiest at what gave you joy, which is really lovely. As a result of our conversation today, David, what will the conversation be that you'll go on to have? With who, and what's the conversation that you will have with them as a result of our conversation today?
For next week, I'm going to be meeting with a client of a loneliness charity that I volunteer at. And I do that because it makes me feel proud of myself and I enjoy that influence on my life. And that is an important ingredient in my overall success. I have worked for a charity for a number of years full time. But to answer your question, I'm going to really enjoy those couple of hours that I'm going to spend with that person in Brighton who's facing isolation and loneliness. And look forward to talking to them.
And what's the conversation that you'll have with them?
Well, I would have loved to know more about what they were doing in the army and when they were there. And the individual was so proudly talking to me about their experience in the Falklands, for example. So look more into their individuality.
Thank you for that answer. That's lovely. And thank you for sharing your wisdom and your story today. For those listeners that would like to have a conversation with you, David, how best for them to get in touch with you and to find out more about the 5-step framework, but also to pick up on any aspect of our conversation today with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can go to my website, which is Coreus or Coreus.co.uk, and I'm on Instagram, but the best way is to find me on LinkedIn or go to our website.
Lovely. Thank you. And I do encourage you to do just that if you're thinking of a big career change and or you're looking to hire the right person for the right job to be part of your murmuration. To listen to other leaders in conversation with me, Anni Townend, do go to my website, annitownend.com. A big thank you as well as to you, David, to my support team, which includes Coco O'Brien for the wonderful intro and outro music, for the lovely design and for the excellent editing and sound production. To contact me, Anni Townend, do email me on annie@annitownend.com. Follow me on LinkedIn, Anni Townend, and subscribe to my newsletter. I look forward to connecting with you. Thank you for listening, and a huge thank you to you, David, for our conversation today.
Thank you so much.